Alrighty, folks, this is the 27th video on the Maybe series, and it's the 7th under LBOs. And in this video, we're going to be doing a full paper LBO. Right? In terms of, do I really think that you will get this question? Honestly, probably not. I didn't get this question throughout my recruiting prep, and I don't know a lot of people that did. But at the same time, I do think that, especially if you're maybe recruiting for like the financial sponsors group, they might ask you something like this, right? So it's something good to know, and it will definitely, if you're able to do this question, you will definitely be able to solve the other LBO questions, and I do think that you will likely get those LBO questions, right? So let's write down some assumptions here for this transaction, and then kind of pose the question here to you. So let's say that we have a EV to EBITDA that is equal to 10 times. And we know that EBITDA is 50 million, and it's going to grow at 5% year over year. We're also told that they will use the maximum leverage, and that is equivalent to 4 times EBITDA. And we know that the interest rate on debt, so the debt interest rate, is equivalent to 10%, right? We're also told that the tax rate is equivalent to 20%, and then there is no depreciation and amortization, right? So this is equal to 0, right? And they'll typically give you those case facts up front, and then they will give you a couple of assumptions, right? So one assumption that is oftentimes stated is that assume that all debt is paid at the end of the 5-year period, and that is equivalent to the cumulative free cash flow amount, right? They might also tell you that don't assume that the interest rate is based on the unpaid debt, right? So they might just tell you that keep interest expense flat. And this is something else that they might say, right? So let's look at how do we really tackle this problem, right? It seems kind of like big and scary, but we can use the same framework that we've used before, right? What's the first thing that we do? Well, this tells us what our enterprise value is, right? So this tells us that our enterprise value, let me actually write what I'm working through in blue. This tells us that our enterprise value is equal to 10 times 50, right? So it's 500 million. The 50 comes from right here, right? What else can we figure out? Well, we know that they use the maximum amount of leverage, and that is 4 times EBITDA. So we know that debt is equivalent to 4 times 50, which is 200 million, right? So this is actually really important because now we know that we have 500 in enterprise value, and that's broken up into debt of 200 and of equity of 300, right? Now what do we need to figure out? We just need to figure out what the ending enterprise value is and what the structure is, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't really talk about what the question is. The question could be anything, really. Like, like what is the internal rate of return? What is the money on money multiple, right? Whatever they kind of ask at the end of the day, like the first couple steps are going to be the same, right? So now where do you go from here, right? Because you have this annoying piece right here that says EBITDA grows at 5%. And we need to know what EBITDA grows to because we're going to exit at the same um, multiple, right? So let's say over here now we have to kind of build out a schedule of what this looks like, right? So let's build it out on the second page here. So we have year one, year two, year three, year four, and year five, right? So we know that in year one, what is our EBITDA? That's given as 50 million. What is our interest expense? They said calculate this out and hold it flat for the whole period, right? Oh, I should have said here, exit at same multiple, right? So what's our interest rate here? Well, we know how much the debt is, right? The debt is 200 million, and 10% of that gives us 20 million. So now we know what the interest rate is as well. So that is $20 worth of interest. So what does that make our earnings before taxes? Because there's no depreciation amortization, right? That makes our earnings before taxes equal to 30. Now we calculate out our taxes. Well, our taxes are going to be 20%, right? So 20% of 30, that is 6, meaning that our net income, which in paper LBOs, you can assume that's equivalent to your free cash flow, is going to be $24, right? And now we essentially just have to repeat that for every single year, but we're growing our EBITDA by 5%, right? So what we're doing here is just a multiplication of 1.05, and we'll continually do that, and we'll fill out all the rest of it, right? So honestly, the easiest thing for me in this scenario, and for these questions, you can definitely ask for a second. You can also pull out a calculator for these questions pretty much all of the time, right? They're not going to hold it against you, right? What I like to do is on my calculator, if you type 50 times 1.05, that will give you the second year's calculation. And instead of filling out the rest of this, right, what's quicker is you just keep hitting equals essentially, and you get 55.1, you get 57.8, and you get 60.8, right? They've told you that interest will be held flat. And if they don't, then you just calculate that out as well. And then you just do the arithmetic here, right? It's this equals, right? So this is 32.5, this is 35.1, this is 37.8, and this is 40.8, right? Now we know our taxes are just going to be this, oops, our EBIT times 0.8. Right? That's how you apply a 20% tax rate. So for this one, unfortunately, you do have to like key some things in, but it won't be too bad, right? You can even skip this entire taxes column. So instead of calculating out 20%, it would just be do the multiplication of 0.8, right? So in reality, I mean, this is kind of a relatively redundant comment. I just made it clear for you guys in terms of the calculation, right? So you can jump straight from our earnings before taxes to our net income. So we get a 26, we get 28.1, we get 30.2, and lastly, we get 32.6, right? And now the last thing that we need to do is remember they told us that assume that all debt is paid at the end of the 5-year period and it's equivalent to the cumulative free cash flow amount. Well, then we just sum this up, right? So this is our net income, otherwise our free cash flow amount. So we sum that up and we get 141, right? And now we're actually able to do this calculation up here, right? Because we know that we paid down $141 worth of debt. So we know that our debt piece is going to be 200 minus 141, which is equivalent to 59. And we know that our equity piece is the rest. And they've also told us that the exit is at the same multiple, right? And that's typically what they'll say. If not, then you just multiply your new EBITDA by the given valuation multiple. So we know that this is 60.8 times 10, which gives us 608. So we know what the equity portion is over here, right? That is simply 608 minus 59, which equals 549, 549, right? So now we can see that in 5 years, we went from 300 to 549. So what's the money on money multiple there, right? So all we have to do for our money on money multiple, that's equivalent to 549 divided by 300, right? And if we do that, we get, that's to be around 1.83, right? And if we know that the money on money multiple is 1.83 in 5 years, what's the closest thing that we have in terms of our golden like LBO rules, right? So if in 5 years we 3x our money, that is a 25% return. And in 5 years, if we 2x our money, that is a 15% return. So we know this is slightly less than 2x, which means that this is slightly less than 15%, right? So let's say, let's call it 13% here, right? So we're able to also figure out what the internal rate of return is, given these facts, and we're able to figure out what the money on money multiple is. At the end of the day, if you really think about this problem, it's not actually that complicated, right? At the end of the day, the LBO calculation was the exact same thing that we've always done here, right? The only thing that was confusing was figuring out what the enterprise value was and what the debt amount was, right? But that was only difficult because we had to do some arithmetic in this fashion, right? Our EBITDA minus our interest equals our earnings before taxes, and then calculate out what the taxes are, right? So this is the only kind of difficult part, and it's just arithmetic. You can use a calculator for this basically all of the time, right? And if you pull out a calculator, or you have a calculator, they say you can't use it, then they're going to give you numbers that are actually pretty easy to do mental math with, right? So they might do like a 3-year LBO or something like that, and do a 10% growth on $100 worth of EBITDA, right? So that should be easier to calculate for you folks. So overall, I mean, that's the only difficult portion. We're doing the exact same thing that we've always done over here. So don't let this type of question like kind of scare you. At the end of the day, it's all just arithmetic and it's not too difficult. And I would say that you're not likely to get this question overall. So I hope that's been helpful, and yeah, we'll hop into the next one.